Well, hello again. Welcome to day 3 of the 17th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. We have with us this afternoon, we have Letitia Bergans. Did I pronounce that right?
Correct.
Okay. She is an associate professor in instructional design at Athens State University in Alabama. We have Marla Williams, who is an associate professor in elementary education at Athens State. We have Tim Thornton, an associate professor in career and technical education at Athens State, and a latecomer, Mark Gale, who is an associate professor in instructional design, also at Athens State.
Mhm.
What they're going to talk about today is ActiveFlex, the next level. So I'll be anxious to hear. I know we've talked here, part of the conference, the past few years, talked about ActiveFlex. So tell us the next level.
All right. Yeah. All right, guys, able to see the screen okay?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, excellent.
The overview?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically with ActiveFlex, what we had was a lot of people through COVID had issues just with HighFlex. I think probably most of you are familiar with HighFlex, sort of the hybrid learning environment. And so we added a separate engagement strategy. And we're going to talk to you about that, as well as like how we configured the rooms and the technology that we used, how we sort of updated the course strategies. We used some new techniques to make it more engaging, how we flipped even our teaching styles, and how we've expanded this to different areas.
So looking at our definition for ActiveFlex, the idea was for us to maximize our student, their choice, and create as much flexibility as possible. And we did that by building on that HighFlex idea, the idea of students could attend in person or online. We said, let's go another step and let's actually make this engaging and create engaging activities where all students can be involved. And when we look at the different modalities, we offer our traditional face-to-face, we have synchronous and online, and we were able to add ActiveFlex to each of those components. And again, it gave students the opportunity to choose what modality they would like to attend, and that could vary from week to week. They could attend live one week, and the next week they could be asynchronous. And it allowed a great deal of flexibility. And again, the students had the option to choose, which leads into the first essential question, just something to ponder as we work through here. Have you encountered activities that may not seem possible to perform online? And when I think about this question, this is what intrigued me about ActiveFlex, the idea I teach entirely online. Well, I can have discussions and other ways to interact with students, but it's not the same as actually being face-to-face talking with them. And through ActiveFlex, I was able to actually get that interaction and engagement.
So our biggest concern, because we're unique at Athens State, we're an upper level university. So all of our students are 100% transfer. We teach junior and senior courses. So we have to hit the ground running when our students transfer in with us. And the distance thing, because of where we are and how we present things, we have students, we're in Northern Alabama, and we have students that are taking courses with us in Southern Alabama. So the distance and that type of thing were issues that we wanted to really overcome for those students. Can they get to campus for an on-campus class? And we wanted to make sure that if they couldn't, they were receiving the same type of instruction as if they were on campus with us. So that was the really big overcome for me, specifically in the College of Education. So, and we wanted to also make sure that our students had the schedule to be able to swap a class. For example, if one of my classes meets at 1 o'clock and on a Monday, and then another class is taught, the same one is taught on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, they can join either class. So they're not stuck to that one course. And we wanted to actually make our assignments and the lessons that we were doing daily much more engaging for students. So with me, and I always talk about me particularly because they're completely different than what I do. So for me, the elementary science class that I teach, we do a lot of STEM activities, and I'll talk about STEM at the end. But there are some students who have to Zoom in for those hands-on STEM lessons, and I'll talk about that later at the end. And that's part of what we do with making those lessons much more engaging. And I found out, and I guess they can speak as well, but I found out, particularly with my science class, that when offered in this HighFlex format, I started having more students want to come to campus because they would Zoom in and see what we were doing on campus. Even though they're engaging through Zoom, they decided they wanted to come to campus and get that campus moment as well. And they would, switch off week to week or whatever, but I started seeing a much more of an involvement with them coming to campus, wanting to do these lessons than just particularly Zooming.
Then we retrofitted some of the classrooms. We ended up with a grant that really helped us through this, but we had sort of a centralized instructor station in the front. We had like a large screen, and so we were able to log into Zoom. We had a Zoom site license, and we were able to display it at the front with the instructor. And then we had different stations throughout the classroom where we could Zoom students into a live class. So when we would do like breakouts and things like that for the discussions, we would have students in class participating with students through Zoom, which really helped out. Some of the things we ended up having were like a touch screen through this grant. We were very fortunate to have that. We set up at least 4 to 8 stations depending on the classroom. So they were retrofitted, so you had a lot more engagement between the students. And it was interesting because a lot of the classes, they ended up making like Facebook groups so that they could get together with other students in other classes that had joined through Zoom and work on assignments. And we also had sound bars, and then we had microphones.
We have pictures at the end.
And we have pictures at the end for that. And then we also had faculty training. So it wasn't just like, good luck, you're on your own. So some of the things are, what are some of the technologies that are maybe you guys use or are more economical, but still sufficient for this type of practice? Sure. One of the first things that we did was we realized in order to get a little bit more engagement, we used this, what we're calling the rule of thirds. So we took the traditional class and we broke it up into 3 sections. The first section, we had sort of a lecture type thing where we would go over the material. The second third, we would go ahead and we would do more of a practical hands-on. And then the last third, we would have more questions and discussion. So it broke it up. Students knew what to expect from week to week, and they were able to jump in and participate a lot more. And it wasn't just like 3 hours of lecture. It was a lot more interaction.
I can do this one. So looking at the release of materials for me teaching entirely online, for every module, the student could choose, I'm going to attend the ActiveFlex or I'm going to do it asynchronously. If they chose that, they just click the button and everything released, like the normal online course. If they chose to attend the ActiveFlex, I had my sessions usually on Tuesdays. They were 45 to 60 minutes. It was every week that went along with the module, and I would have my online lecture. Then we would have a breakout session where there'd be discussion, which would be our reinforcement activity. and we come back together, we talk about it and discuss it. And then any clear up, any questions, we'd have it, and that would be my ActiveFlex session.
And that's very much how I taught it as well at the elementary level. The students would, at the beginning, either choose to attend or do it completely online. But again, that's weekly. You know, they can choose to be completely online the first week and then started looking ahead to see, do I need to zoom in the next week? Do I understand So I started to see on my end that students were actually looking at the schedule and looking at the titles of things to determine, I don't know enough about this. Maybe I need to zoom in and do the live session instead of trying to do it on my own next week. So I started getting a lot more engagement on prepping, a lot more prepping engagement each week than I was accustomed to.
One of the first things we did with the breaking up into the thirds was we used Canvas for our LMS, but we actually put in prerequisites. So we had this initial quiz that said, "Are you attending live?" And we all then recorded lectures. If they were not attending live, then it would drop the video that was pre-recorded. If they were attending live, then they would have the option to join in with the class via Zoom or actually in the classroom.
And for the reinforcement activities, this is where that engagement part comes in. You know, with HighFlex there, it's just the regular platform for HighFlex. And then we realize that students need more time to talk. They need more time to socialize. They need more time to have active discussions. So we created reinforcement activities that require those students to meet together, whether they're at home or on campus or whatever. They do that breakout room and do the assignment. For my class, I worked with Mark Gale, who's not here with us today, and my reinforcement activities build each week as the students go through. So it's sometimes very few, they're exposed to something new, but most of my reinforcement activities build each week. So I tend to get a lot more involvement with my online and with the ActiveFlex sessions than I do for my students that are wanting just to do it completely online.
With the class that I teach, a technology class and the design class, the reinforcement activities were generally more like an Amazon review. They would review some either technology tool or design tool. They would talk about like the function of it, you know, if they would recommend it, how it works and how to use it in different situations.
And I'd say for me, mine usually, it was in a mindful leadership course, and it was usually a topic related to mindfulness. And I had the four same students every week come, and they got to know each other, and they would really, open up and talk about the issue. And it was really cool to see them come together and talk about it. Then when we came back and talked about it, and they actually knew each other and were able to, build off each other, which you could never do that in strictly online course where they never interact.
And my assessments course, which is the ActiveFlex course, one of the assignments that they do is directly tied to their EdTPA portfolio. So in the state of Alabama, our students' main source of certification is they have to complete EdTPA. And one of the big issues with that is giving correct feedback or giving quality feedback to student work. So the students would get an example of a third grade writing assignment. They would have to determine whether the teacher gave quality feedback in the breakout session, and then we'd come back together and talk about it. The following week, it may be that they get a student work sample, and then they determine the feedback that goes on it. And they have to meet the rubric requirements for that. So that's what I'm talking about when I say most of mine build on each other. So the multi-section courses, and I know Tish can talk about this a lot. They have quite a few more multi-sections or courses than I do on my end. But for example, I work with my adjunct very, very closely. And she teaches two of my classes. I teach another course, but I also teach one of the ActiveFlex classes as well. However, our students from all three classes can do ActiveFlex at the same time. So it's not designed for just one class on one day and another class on another day, all three courses can Zoom into the same live session. So when we talk about doing multi-sections, that's what we're talking about. Students can choose to come across, I won't say boundaries, but course boundaries. And then they're getting more of an involvement across the whole group, not just a little section of their class.
In the technology class, we have 7 sections this semester. So we each have a different time that they can go ahead and join a session. Some are in the morning, some are in the afternoon. And we even had one at 6 a.m. on Saturday that people came to because we thought nobody will come then.
They showed
but
up.
They showed up. So I don't know, it is flexible. We end up having a master course so that we all have the same course, and then everybody adds their own flair, but it is sort of the same class, so it doesn't matter which section you join, whether you come in person or online.
And I will say that, like, my adjunct did a live session on a Thursday afternoon. I did my live session on a Tuesday morning, and I had worked with her, trained with her, so I was completely comfortable with her doing the live session because she knows the material just like I know the material. So it was neither here nor there. Now I will say this, and you're probably thinking, how do you keep up with who attends the sessions across multiple courses? And
That was an automation of tasks. We
Yes.
ended up doing a quiz for the week. If you attended, you got a password. You put the password in the quiz. Regardless of whose course you were in, you got credit for it based on that password. So we did do a lot of automation and prerequisites in Canvas, but there are other ways to do that too.
that was that.
Yeah. So we've also increased the ActiveFlex. We started with 7 in a pilot. We have over 20 courses now, and it's growing still. And it's really interesting. Like, Marla was one of the later people to come on board, and she has really sold it. Her, you and your adjunct both like it. And we've even gone into different ways to use it. Mark Gale, who's not here, but he had COVID. So he had his class come. He had one of the people from Atlas, which is our online learning area, come and monitor his class. And then he Zoomed in from home while his class was there. So a
On
reverse.
campus.
Yeah. So sort of a reverse teaching. And then he and I teach the same course. So we've co-taught several times where we'll both be there and kind of feed off of each other and add different elements. So that's kind of fun. And the students really get involved in it, and they have even asked for more of those type courses.
Can I add just one thing? I know for me, I assume it's the same for you all. We have a lot of adult learners who maybe haven't been in college for 5, 10, 20 years and are really nervous taking online courses. And this ActiveFlex gives them that option, or gives them that flexibility to engage in the content when they want to, but actually engage with fellow classmates or an instructor, which I think a lot of my students are looking for. They don't want to just sit in isolation and learn the material. They want to actually engage with others.
Yeah, it builds more of a rapport.
Right.
And I have had, you always have to look at your course evaluations. It's just part of it. But on my course evaluations, I tend to get 3 or 4 comments on there that say all of my courses should have been taught this way, because the students really love the engagement part of the lesson. And again, that's what the ActiveFlex level is really pulling that engagement in. And this is kind of my baby, so I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. Here in Alabama, and I don't know if you can tell by my slang or country accent, but here in Alabama, we have 2 new laws, 1 law and 1 act that have come through. That's the Alabama Literacy Law and then the Alabama Numeracy Act. And both of those are requiring really strict guidelines on the classroom teachers to focus heavily on literacy instruction and math. And poor little science, I'm the science professor, poor little science gets shoved off to the side. So part of my responsibility as a professor of science was to teach my students how to do STEM activities or quality science lessons instead of just getting a book out and reading it, instead of just doing a worksheet. If you're going to do a center, if it has to be in a center, make it a quality STEM center. So that was part of the redesign for my course with the ActiveFlex learning. So I partnered with Coward Elementary School, which is a school in Limestone or Athens City, and it's a STEM school. Here in Athens, the students in pre-K through 3 get to choose the elementary school that they want to. If they're fascinated with STEM, they'll choose to go to Coward. If they are more interested in the theater, they'll go to a different elementary school. Everything is a little bit, the pre-K to 3rd grade is a little different. But the image that you see right now, when Dr. Bergantz was mentioning the setup, this is an image that I have in my STEM lab. So this is the main computer screen right here in the back, and it's run by the stationary computer that's here. I have 4 of these stations with a big screen, basically a TV, big screen at the end of each one of these stations. There's a document camera attached there. Of course, there's keyboard, there's the microphone overhead, and then we all have headphones as well that the students can use. So I have 4 of these within the class. Anything that I present here is shared via Zoom onto these screens. If the student is working on a hands-on activity or they're working on a STEM lesson, the students might create something. They can pull the document camera out, set it up, and share their image with everybody through Zoom, whether they're on campus or at home. So this is, again, part of what the grant, I received a grant for my STEM lab, but there was also part of the HyFlex grant that helped purchase some of that technology that's there.
Sort of through trial and error, we ended up with headphones, because with all the students talking, the level of volume just got too loud to distinguish between everything. So we ended up going with headphones, which worked for us.
So the big thing with the elementary and the STEM, and I want to challenge all of you to think about, if you're teaching courses, how you would do this as well. For my students or my pre-service teachers, they are very concerned about materials. How do I find materials? How do I set up materials? How do I keep materials? How do I organize materials? I can't do that in a STEM classroom. So we started off our engagement by deciding what are your concerns? What are you most scared about? And then we do it each semester. We design the reinforcement activities to kind of meet those needs of the current students that we're teaching. So when I teach a science lesson, and I do it a couple of different ways. I teach a science lesson. My students may be doing a STEM activity. I've got students Zooming in. I've got students sitting in campus, and they're working in a breakout room to complete the inquiry activity. That's one way that I do it. Then we come back as a whole class and they share. Sometimes my class actually goes to the elementary school and we meet on campus at the elementary school. And for example, last 2 weeks ago, I had a class that met out there. I had a student who was just diagnosed with a seizure disorder. So she could not come to the class meeting at the elementary school. So she Zoomed in. I took a laptop. I set it up in the elementary school. I Zoomed her in to that campus class at the elementary school with a breakout group for her there. So we can do it anywhere. We can do it here on campus. I can do it from the elementary school, and they're still getting the same instruction, whether she was home or on campus or at the elementary school, as they would regardless. So that's kind of how we set things up. It's challenging. It's a lot of pre-building. It's a lot of working, it took me, I think, 2 semesters before I was ready to launch mine, from just designing the reinforcement and engaging activities, all of those things. But overall, it's one of the best decisions I ever made, was to do it in this format. So, do you have any questions about anything? Maybe not. Do you want to tell them where the grant came from?
We got a FIPSI grant from the government, and that basically allowed us to retrofit 12 classrooms in all the colleges on campus. And then part of it went to your STEM lab, and then we ended up doing the STEM lab as well. So that's been really nice and helpful. And a lot of people who were a little bit skittish at first have really embraced and enjoyed the ActiveFlex model.
Right. I would say, thinking about it, I know for me, I got a lot of assistance for the technology side, and I think that's key for this to really be effective. You have to have some assistance, because to add that on top of your plate, all the releases and everything would have been really challenging. So we were fortunate because of that grant to have the technology assistance. I think now once it's up and running, you could do it, but initially starting,
It was a little overwhelming.
it really was, but yeah.
Especially with the traditional classroom and then zooming in. Sometimes we'd have 40 people on Zoom. So we had somebody that was dedicated to reading the chat, because while trying to teach it, while trying to read the chats and doing everything else, it got slightly overwhelming. From a standpoint of flexibility, we're all associated with the College of Education. We had several people who either had COVID or one of the students in my traditional class ended up getting hired as an emergency teacher. So he would have had to drop the class, but with ActiveFlex, he was able to go online or asynchronous, and he was able to complete the class. So the flexibility has really helped students like that.
And I'm going to say the biggest struggle for me was, number one, doing the videos.
Yeah.
I do not like to video myself, and I had to create, for those students who are doing it completely online, I had to create a 15-20 minute video to cover what I was doing that week. And I struggle with that, because I don't like to see myself in video at all. So that was a big issue for me to overcome that. So doing the weekly, 12 weeks, 15 weeks of videos, again, that's that pre-planning. And then the other part was actually designing those reinforcement activities, because overall the lesson, flows, whether because it's online or whatever, it flows well regardless. But when you do the breakout rooms, I wanted the lesson that they were going to do in the breakout room, or the activity they were going to do in the breakout room, to be something that was challenging for them and would require all of them to become engaged in that discussion. So, when they'd go to the breakout room, I would pop in to each breakout room in about 3 minutes into the breakout session, and I would pop in, and they would be actively discussing what the assignment was and what they were supposed to do, because they knew they had to come back and present on that when the session ended. So, and there were a lot of times when I would say, okay, guys, I'm going to end it in about a minute. I'm going to do that. Oh, no, give us 3 more minutes. So I'd check with each breakout room, give us 3 more minutes. So, that was the other hard thing, was making sure that I was creating a quality breakout session for the students.
I would add, I know for me, a surprising result that I didn't expect was the benefit I got from teaching this way. Being an online instructor, sometimes you feel like you're more of a facilitator, but with this approach, I actually got to teach, which you create videos and it doesn't feel always like teaching, but with this way, I actually got to teach and see student reactions and engage with my students, which I really enjoyed. And that was certainly, I wasn't expecting that, but it definitely made the experience more enjoyable for me. And I know other faculty have said that as well, that they really enjoyed the engagement factor.
Some of the reinforcement activities have led to repositories as well. We have like some student lesson plans that have been added in there with, different instructors. There's a biology teacher who's doing this as well, and she's added different components about stream ecology and like where to go to find what type of fish and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting from that standpoint as well.
And one of the repositories I require of mine is to find, my students all have to find a true inquiry lesson based on the 5E lesson plan or model for teaching STEM. And they have a Google link that they go in and they fill out a form and they attach the website and they rank it and they give the standards for Alabama that activity covers. And then at the end of the semester, that all builds, and at the end of the semester I send that link out to my students so that even though they left my class, they still have access to this list of really good inquiry lessons that they can use, and they can sort it by grade level or by standard or however, because of how it's set up in the Google Doc. But that builds each semester. So right now I think I'm up to right at 300, and there are a few of them that are duplicate, but I'm right at 300 activities or inquiry lessons that my former students still have access to. Oh, and here's an example of the STEM lesson that we did. This is, if you're a science nerd like I am, this is a PEEPS lesson. It's about air pressure or the atmospheric pressure that your body goes through when you go into space. And the students use PEEPs, and they have to design a suit to keep the PEEP from expanding in the vacuum of space. So, and I don't think I have a picture of they're checking how much pressure there is on their head. But this is at the elementary school that I go to. And there was a section over here in the corner where I had a laptop set up for my students who were at home, who were watching all of this. So, and if I'm teaching a STEM activity and they are at home, I like to send them a list of materials that they may need for the activity that we're going to be doing the next week. And so that they can have that at home and they can kind of participate at home with their set of stuff, as opposed to just watching online as to what we're doing here. So, but anyhow. And here's our contact information. If any of you would like to ask us any questions or find out any information about the grants or how everything goes, so just let us know.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And get the QR code. I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, and good information for us to use. So I really appreciate it.